Welcome to Future Talk. On today's program, we're going to talk about the Maker Faire. The Maker Faire is an annual event that started in San Mateo, California in 2006. Since then, it spread to cities all around the world. It was originally organized by Make magazine, and it focuses on do-it-yourselfers, people who like to build things on their own or together with friends. We attended this year's fair in San Mateo, and it was huge, with about 1,000 exhibitors and 100,000 attendees. We have some footage from the fair, which we're going to show in just a couple of minutes, but I'd like to introduce my guest first. He is David Lang. David is part of the Maker community. He blogs for Make magazine, which is the flagship publication of the Maker movement. He had one of the most popular exhibits at the fair, and he won 3 Editor's Choice Awards. His Maker project was a homemade submarine, an open-source, remotely operated vehicle for underwater exploration known as OpenROV. David, welcome to the program. Great to have you here today.
Marty, thank you very much for having me.
So what exactly is Maker Faire about? What is it trying to achieve?
Right. So Maker Faire is this event that, like you said, started in 2006 in San Mateo, and it's really a celebration of the Maker movement. So all of these people who, from people who are building robots to people who are doing crafts. This year I saw origami tape artists. So it's really this diverse crowd. It's a kind of a mix of Burning Man and a science fair, where you could see just about anything. But really the underlying theme is that there's all these passionate people who are interested in kind of making their world.
And we're going to be talking more about the Maker Faire, and we're going to be talking more about your own project, which is the OpenROV. But before we do that, we have some video from the Maker Faire itself, and we're going to show that video right now. So let's roll that tape. We're here at the Maker Faire at the San Mateo Event Center. This is probably the biggest do-it-yourself fair in the world. There are over 3,000 people, many of them hobbyists, many of them professionals, just making things and bringing things they've made before. There's every kind of exotic gadget you can think of. There's tons of robots, tons of interesting vehicles, bicycles, light shows. There are probably over 100,000 people here today, and we're going to go on a tour and look at the imagination of some of the people who are producing at the Maker Faire. Let's take a look. There were both outdoor and indoor events and lots of interesting presentations. This is the innovation stage where we saw a cardboard helicopter take off and land.
That's as much as I want to risk in front of a live audience. But that's a flying cardboard robot.
We visited the Microsoft robotics booth where they were sponsoring a contest to see who could make the best robot using a commercially available kit provided by Microsoft. The kit includes the Kinect hardware, which is capable of tracking human motion. I spoke to Lok Tan, who was manning the booth.
We're showing off contest winners. We started a contest called Robotics at Home, where we try to challenge developers to build robots that are used at home. What if we gave them a robot base, what could they do with it? And we had 10 finalists, and 7 of them submitted the final projects after about 3 months. And we picked the 3 winners, and we just announced the 3 winners today.
So Microsoft has its own robotics kit that you can buy in the store and make your own robots?
Yes, correct.
One of the finalists in the Microsoft competition was Todd Christel, whose robot uses the Microsoft hardware to monitor aging adults in their homes. I asked him how the machine actually works.
The device moves around the environment, it moves around their home, and uses the Kinect to monitor their body positions and categorize. So, for example, if you're in the kitchen, and he knows you're in the kitchen because he followed you in there, and you're doing things like this, you're working in the kitchen, as opposed to cleaning the living room. If you're sitting in the kitchen, he can log that as eating versus sitting in the living room where you're watching television.
Now, let's say you fall. This device sees that. What does it do?
And actually the device is always listening for the word help, and if he hears a call for help, even if he's like in night mode where he's just recharging and the person is sleeping, if they get up during the night and they fall, he hears help, he contacts the authorities and voices out saying, I know you're fallen, I've called the authorities, and I'm coming to find you. And then it uses their voice to localize where they are and goes and finds them and sets up a two-way televideo conference with them and the caregiver so that they can be reassured and they can be assessed until the first responders arrive.
One of the most popular technologies at the fair was the Arduino technology. Arduino is an open-source microcontroller made by an Italian company that can serve as a brain for homemade robots. Michael Schielo was manning the Arduino booth. I asked him how the microcontrollers work.
So we have here the Arduino programming environment, and it's something that comes for free with Arduino. It's free and open source, and anybody can download it and use it. And the idea is that it does require programming, which is a little intimidating to people, but it comes with a ton of examples. So you find an example that's close to what you want. For instance, if you wanted to make a motor to control the fan to come on and off at some interval. Well, there isn't an example that controls a motor, but there is an example that controls a light, makes a light blink on and off. So that's pretty close. You could just take that, modify it a little bit, and then you'll have your motor controller.
Is there a controller out here that we can look at just to see what it looks like?
Well, this is a pretty good example. I have my Arduino microcontroller here. This is the standard Arduino Uno, which right now is the most popular one that's being used. And then I have it hooked up to a light sensor over here. So this device is able to measure light. And I have it connected to an LED that's blinking over here. So by modifying the program, I could have it control the blinking of this light according to how much light fell on this sensor over here.
So you're basically instructing when these wires carry electricity to a target?
Exactly. That's an excellent way to sum it up. Now, what we've tried to do for beginners who otherwise would have had to go through a rather painful process is, as I said, we've created many examples, and then a very simple way to take that program from your computer and cram it down into here. There's just one button that says upload. You press that, and it goes into here. And at this point, the program is stored on the microcontroller. So you can unplug it from the computer and power it by batteries. So for instance, you could make a robot that was based on this, such as these over here. So we're using the same Arduino microcontroller, the same concept of a light sensor. There's one light sensor over there and another one over there. And instead of controlling the LED that we had over there, we're using it to control a pair of motors over here. And the program just simply compares the brightness of these two light bulbs, and whichever one is brighter, it turns on the other motor, so the robot will constantly move towards light.
Another very interesting technology was from Litro Picture Evolution, which makes cameras that take pictures that can be refocused after the picture has been taken. Chris McComber gave me a demonstration.
We're essentially capturing the light field, which is all the rays of light at every point in space in every direction. And that essentially is a vector set that allows us to give a whole bunch of features like refocusing and even more after you've taken the shot. So what you're seeing here is our web application where you can play with these pictures. This is the same experience you would get on your Facebook wall or if you embedded this in your blog. But as you're going through, you can see that the user is clicking on the image, allowing him to refocus. He can double click in to zoom onto the picture, refocus while he's in there. And you're seeing a wide range of shots here, whereas it zooms out, it's going to look at this eyeball next, which is a very close-up shot, obviously a macro mode. But even getting a refocusable shot across an eyeball is amazing and a lot of fun for someone to click through and kind of experience.
The Maker Faire was definitely a family-friendly event, and there were activities for people of all ages. They had a soldering class for children, and for younger children, they had this robot petting zoo. A lot of creations at the fair were basically whimsical, and some of them were pretty large, like this fire-breathing stegosaurus. For science fiction and fantasy fans, they also had people dressed up as characters from those realms, like this science fiction character called Warhammer. But one of the biggest crowd pleasers was this guitar player in an insulated suit playing between two electrical generators and constantly being struck by lightning. There were all kinds of interesting vehicles, like these race cars made partially out of garbage cans. There were also bicycles of many interesting designs, like this one, and this one, and this one. And there was this colorful conveyance for carrying passengers from one part of the fair to another. There was really too much to see in just one day, but it was great fun, and if you ever get a chance to go to a Maker Faire, you should take it. And that was our video of the Maker Faire. So David, how did you get involved in the Maker Faire? How did you get started in this whole thing?
Yeah, it's a good question. So a couple of years ago, I was just like you. I'd never been to Maker Faire. I'd heard about it from a few people. And I just decided that it was something I wanted to check out. So I went to the May of 2010 was my first Maker Faire. And I was totally blown away. I couldn't believe some of the things, everything that we just saw in that video. But more importantly, I was really impressed with all the people, because everyone who was working on their different projects were so excited and so passionate and so eager to kind of tell and share and help me understand it, that I knew I wanted to get involved.
Now, you've been working on homemade submarines. In fact, we have a model of one right here. This is actually full size, if the camera can get a shot of this on the desk. This doesn't have all the electronics in it. It's basically the shell, but were you working on that before you started at the Maker Faire, or was this inspired by the Maker Faire?
It was definitely inspired by the Maker Faire. So prior to that experience, that first experience, I had no making experience. I mean, I didn't have shop class in my high school. I didn't really spend that much time tinkering. But after that experience, I knew I wanted to get involved. And so I started hanging around different meetups and following around some of these makers who I had met, and eventually got introduced to Eric Stackpole, who is my friend and partner in OpenROV. And we had this amazing conversation about underwater robots and that we wish we had a tool like this. And so that was about a year ago, and that initial conversation has turned into this OpenROV project.
Now, do you have all the equipment at home to make this, or do you go someplace and work together with a group to put it together?
Exactly. So we've done all of our prototyping at Tech Shop. So what OpenROV is it's an open source underwater robot. And what that means is you can go essentially to a lake or an ocean or stream and drop this in and then plug it into your computer and see what it sees. There's no way we would have been able to do this if it was just Eric and I in our garage. We just don't have the tools. So we went to Tech Shop and fabricated the entire...
And Tech Shop is a place where it provides a lot of tools and you pay a fee to be able to work there?
Yeah, exactly. It's like a fitness club, except they have all these making tools, right? So they have traditional making tools like they have a full wood shop and a full metal shop and welding, but they also have a lot of the new rapid prototyping technologies like 3D printers, laser cutters, water jets, and things like that. So it's a fantastic place for beginning makers, but also really experienced makers.
Now, did you have to know anything about this type of device when you started? I mean, did you have any background or professional expertise?
I did not. Eric had some. He worked for NASA. But I had nothing. So this whole process has been a learning experience. And that's something that I found out about the maker community, is that it's okay to be a beginner. And that if you have a dream and you have an idea and you have a project you want to work on, it's very much a situation of just-in-time learning. So you kind of learn the different skills as you need them.
We actually have a video which shows a little more detail about the device. Is that video ready to go? If so, let's roll it.
Hi, I'm David Lang. And I'm Eric Stackpole. We're here to tell you about OpenROV. OpenROV is an open-source, remotely operated vehicle, or ROV, that can be controlled from the surface while relaying live video and other data to the operator as it flies. It weighs 2.5 kilograms and is about the size of a shoebox. That's small enough to test in your bathtub, yet large enough to add payloads like cameras and sensors. The intention of the project is to create an ROV that is low cost and easy enough for anyone to build, but that is still capable of doing relevant scientific research and exploration. OpenROV is propelled by 3 off-the-shelf brushless motors, 2 in the back which allow it to move forward and aft as well as turn, and 1 vertical thruster which allows the neutrally buoyant ROV to change depth. 2 battery packs on the bottom of the ROV provide it with around an hour and a half of runtime, as well as counterweight the thrusters and act as ballast. Between the battery packs is a payload bay, where up to 4 threaded rods spaced 50 millimeters apart can be inserted to accept a wide variety of payloads. Electronics for the ROV are contained in a single acrylic tube. Inside this tube, an onboard computer hosts live video from a webcam and sends commands to an Arduino microcontroller that interfaces with the motor controllers and other hardware on board. Because bulky tethers can significantly impede the agility of an ROV, we've developed a way to communicate 10 base T Ethernet data over a single twisted pair of wire using an off-the-shelf part. The entire interface for the ROV is hosted from the robot itself, so instead of installing software, you just plug the tether into your Ethernet port, log on to the ROV's IP address through Chrome or Firefox, and fly.
OpenROV is completely open source and open hardware, meaning we've published all the design, schematics, and code on the website and invite co-developers to help make it better. It's definitely a maker product at this point, but we think that by being an open hardware project and developing this with the community, that we can create an open source ROV that's capable of serious scientific research. We've come a long way, and we still have a long ways to go. The next step is to get more of these open ROVs out into the wild, into the hands of makers and tinkerers around the world.
Okay, so that was the video about the OpenROV. Now, is the maker movement, is it really a movement, and would you call it a movement, or is it a community? How would you describe the whole thing?
Well, I would say both. I mean, it's definitely a community, and that's something that has stuck out for me as someone who's relatively new to this whole thing. Has been the community that's been so welcoming. I'd say it's a movement because so many people are getting involved, and I think it's really easy for people to think that making is something that they don't know how to do, or they don't know those skills or those technologies. But once you get started and once you kind of take that initial first step, I think you find that the community is very welcoming and that it's really easy to get involved.
Now, you also blog about the maker movement. You blog for Make Magazine. Right. What's the name of your blog?
So I write a column called the Zero to Maker column. So as I went through this process, this kind of becoming a maker and diving into the community, I decided, or I talked to the Make editors and said, I'm learning a ton, I'd love to write about it. So the Zero to Maker column is really a chronicle of that journey. So all the different classes that I took and experiences that I had and everything I learned along the way.
Now, there are Maker Fairs in many cities. It started in San Mateo, but they're having one in New York soon. They just had one in Detroit. Do you go around to all the Maker Fairs?
As many as I can. So I've been to the two Bay Area Maker Fairs, and we're getting ready to bring the OpenROV to New York at the end of September for the World Maker Faire in New York.
Is this your primary project? Do you plan to branch out into other projects, or is this sufficient for now, just working on this?
Oh, this is turning into more than a full-time job, and we have thousands of people all over the world who are contributing to the design. So it's becoming this amazing project and platform for us to collaborate with people, makers, tinkerers, but also scientists and educators all around the world. So this is
now this is open source, but what does that actually mean to say that it's an open source project?
Right, so we're not just selling this OpenROV, we're actually developing it with our community. So we post all the designs, all the schematics online for people to download and build themselves if they want. But by doing that, we get incredible feedback on how to make it better.
So you have a lot of people who are really interested in this, because I guess underwater exploration is not for everybody. It's not something that you play with in your house. You've got to go out on a boat in the ocean.
Yeah, or or even a lake, right? Or what got us started was an underwater cave up in Northern California. So up until now there hasn't been a great tool for people who are just curious, right? The commercial ROV like this probably goes for somewhere on the order of $10,000, which is prohibitive to a lot of amateurs who just have something they want to explore or curious. And so we really wanted to break that barrier down.
Now, I understand that you sell the kits. Like, somebody can order a kit from you and they get all the parts and they put it together and they can modify it. So maybe instead of the camera that you would use, maybe they'll put a different kind of sensor in it.
Absolutely. I mean, I heard today from a group who are putting different types of cameras. People are putting all sorts of sensors. People want to try depth sensors. People want to put robotic arms, or all these different ideas for what can be added or augment the.
So it sounds like you're bringing serious scientific research to the masses.
Well, that's the goal. That's the goal. But we're not doing it ourselves. It's a community. So anyone who wants to get involved with this project is welcome to join.
Now we have another video which actually shows you taking this out on the ocean and showing what the OpenROV sees from under the water. Is that video ready? If so, let's go ahead and roll that tape. Okay, so this doesn't have a soundtrack, so maybe you could just explain what's going on.
Sure, yeah, so this is a video from a month or 2 months ago where Eric and I traveled to Key Largo, about 4 miles off the coast of Key Largo. We were with NASA as part of their NEMO mission, and they were going to Aquarius, which is an underwater research laboratory that's about 70 feet underwater, and scientists are able to go there and dive and actually do saturation diving, so they're able to go for up to 10 days at a time and study for long periods of time. And
so this is the ROV's point of view. The camera is in the ROV.
Correct. That footage right there is actually from the GoPro that we've attached to the top, because the GoPro had just much better footage.
So the way this works is that you're connected to a computer somewhere on land, and whatever the ROV can see, you're instantly seeing it on your computer?
Exactly. There's a live feed right back to the screen, and you can just log into the IP address that's on the ROV. So eventually we'd like to be able to control these from the internet. So you could just pull up a browser and log on and maybe go to visit the Aquarius Underwater Lab with an ROV.
Does wireless work underwater, or does it have to be connected by wires?
It does. It doesn't work underwater, so our ROV does have a tether.
Okay. So it's limited as to how far it can go?
It absolutely is limited at this point. We have a number of people in our community who are very interested in developing more autonomous features, so working without a tether, and we're really excited and encouraging those folks.
But with the tether, you're also sending data, right? So you can drive it and steer it and tell it where to go?
Absolutely, yeah, exactly. So controlling the motors. There's also a servo on board inside the compartment that'll turn the camera up or down, and then eventually control the robotic arms and things like that.
So while this is running, are you up in the boat somewhere watching this on your computer?
Yeah, exactly. So we're on the surface, and you can see the tether there dragging behind the.
And what about the
ROV.
buoyancy? How does it go up or down?
Yeah, so the ROV is neutrally, it's very, very close to neutrally buoyant. I'd say it's slightly positively buoyant. Right there you can see the motor and the thruster on the top, so that allows you to go up and down by either thrusting up or thrusting down.
How long did it take you to design this?
This project has been something that Eric and I have been working on for over a year. It's come a long way. I mean, you can go on our website and see some of the early designs, but it's gone through a number of iterations. It's something we always like to talk about. It's kind of failing our way to success.
Okay, so I guess this type of research is not totally costless. It must cost a bit of money. How do you finance it?
Yeah, so that's another interesting aspect. So we've put our project up on Kickstarter. We put it up about a month ago, and we've already raised at $95,000 at this point from our community.
A lot of people might not know what Kickstarter is, so maybe you could explain that a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So Kickstarter is a crowdfunding platform that allows you to put your creative project, whether it's a film, a music, a CD, or if it's an underwater robot. And if you have some fans and people are interested, they're able to pledge support for the project. In our case, we had the actual kit as a reward level, so people could pledge and get one of the first OpenROV kits.
So people could pledge different amounts of money, and depending on how much they pledge, they get more rewards?
Absolutely, absolutely. So we have a series of different reward levels, going from just being listed on our website all the way up to sponsoring an OpenROV expedition.
Now, my understanding is that when you put a project on Kickstarter, you declare how much money you want to raise and the deadline by which you have to raise it. And if you don't raise the money by the deadline, you get nothing.
Exactly. So you set a funding goal, so the amount that you need to make your project go, and then you set a duration, so between 15 days and 45 days. We set our goal at $20,000, and we did it for 30 days. Fortunately, we were able to reach our goal within just a couple hours, so it was really, really an exciting day for us.
And after the deadline passes, are people still pledging more money?
Yeah, people are still pledging they're still pledging right now. So we've gotten a number of pledges actually today.
Now, does that say something about the strength and size of your network, the fact that there's so many people who know what you're doing? I mean, are there a few big donors, or are there lots of small donors?
Oh, it's mostly small donors, right? So we have over 400 backers, which is really, really amazing. I think what it says is that people are really excited about having a low-cost open-source tool like OpenROV. And really, this is the first time that we've had the technology to do this. This is the first time that we've been able to do something like this because we have access to TechShop and we have platforms like Kickstarter.
Now, there are people with tons of money like NASA. And I noticed that NASA was somewhat involved in this also, so it sounds like you're working with other groups as well.
Yeah, being open source, we're open to working with just about anybody. NASA has been very, very helpful and encouraging. They have an open government team on NASA who's actually exploring ways to bring open source technologies into NASA's work, and they've been an incredible contact for us, and they've been very supportive.
You usually think of NASA as space exploration, but some people say that there's more useful knowledge to be learned by exploring the oceans than by exploring outer space. It'll pay off sooner.
Absolutely, and the exciting thing about underwater exploration is you could drop one of these ROVs in and be exploring actual life. So if there's 95% of the space where life can exist on this planet is underwater, and so we're excited to be opening that up.
Do you have plans for bigger and better ROVs? I don't know why it would need to be bigger if it's basically taking pictures.
Right. Well, we have plans to continue to grow the community. So it all depends on what the community is able to co-create. So it's a little bit bigger than us at this point, and we're excited to see. I mean, we hope that we can transition into bigger and more exciting robots. But
so it sounds like the community itself is kind of a platform, and it's not just the OpenROV community, but the Maker community as a whole, which might have a lot of cross-fertilization between your project and other projects.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, just to give you an example, just being at Tech Shop for us has been a huge advantage. You can see this bend of the acrylic is actually a pretty important design feature that wasn't always obvious to us. But another maker at Tech Shop who's working on a different project said, hey, why don't you guys think about doing this? So it is definitely this kind of cross-pollination of ideas that happens at Maker Faire and that happens at places like Tech Shop that are making all these projects go. Because
very often you have proprietary systems where you don't want anyone to know what you're doing, but in that case you don't have the benefit of other people. So I think this is a pretty good approach, bringing a lot of people in, having it critiqued from every possible angle.
You know, people always give us a hard time. They said, you know, are you patenting this, or how are you going to do this? And we just keep saying no. We're just going to continue to share the designs. And I tell you what, we're having a lot of fun.
And we're going to have to stop right there because we are out of time. I'd like to thank you for being here. David Lang from the Maker Faire, OpenROV. This is Marty Wasserman.
Thanks, Marty.
Join us again next time for future talk. We'll see you next time.